Hello Dojo, this is Forum, and in this video I'll be introducing you to a Sansha 10 out of 10 DED escalation site, otherwise known as the Centus T.P. Assembly Co. This video is going to be split up into a couple different parts. First I'm going to talk about what a DED site is, how you get them, how you run them. Then I'm going to give you a little breakdown on what ships people like to run them in, and I'll give you a couple fits for the ship that I use, the Rattlesnake. And then after that, I'll show you a run-through of me doing an actual site. So feel free to skip ahead if you don't need the information in one part. So starting off, a DED escalation is basically a mini generated dungeon. After you complete any combat site, you have a small chance of spawning an escalation. Each combat site will spawn a different escalation, so 10 out of 10s come from havens and sanctums. The chance is about 5% chance to spawn escalation when you finish the site, and you'll get a little pop-up that says, "Oh, you received a mysterious signal. You should investigate this further." If you get that, then you can look in your agency tab, which is this system that nobody ever uses, and it will look like this. It'll say Escalation Site, Centus TP Assembly Co. It'll list the system, how far away it is, and how long until it expires. When they first spawn, they will have 24 hours left, and when the time is up, the site will despawn even if you're currently in the middle of it. So be sure that you're watching the time carefully so you don't have the site despawn on you. Now the two main ships that people generally like to run Sansha 10 out of 10s in is a Tengu and a Rattlesnake. The Tengu general playstyle is heavy missile fit with an afterburner. I have here a fit that one of my friends has given me. I do not run Tengus myself, so I don't actually know any ins and outs of the fittings, but it's just heavy missile launchers, lots and lots of tank. You're definitely gonna want the shield booster and the shield boost amplifier and an afterburner, and then some more missile stuff. The Rattlesnake is the other ship of choice. Here is the fit that I use. It's going to be cruise missiles, also tank, lots of tank, shield booster, shield boost amplifier, and a micro warp drive. Even though normally you won't be using it, you'll be sitting still most of the time. And then most of your damage is going to come from your drones and a good portion from missiles. There's going to be a lot of debate on which is better, but each definitely has its pros and cons. The biggest benefit of the Tengu is that it is very flexible. You can fit to travel to get to and from the site. You can be cloaky and interdiction nullified, which is very, very nice and makes you very hard to catch. On the other hand, as a Rattlesnake, you can fit to travel, but you can't be cloaky or nullified, so gating your Rattlesnake around in dangerous space is really going to be, well, pretty dangerous. The benefits of the Rattlesnake, and the reason that I started out using it, is I like the playstyle. You sit still and snipe stuff with your cruise missiles and your sentries. There's not too much reliance on having to move around. It is a bit safer than a Tengu. You have a lot more buffer, and since you're face tanking all the damage anyway, it's not like you're going to get instantly deleted if you slow down or stop your ship. The intro level Rattlesnake is definitely going to be a lot cheaper than a Tengu, and also in the site itself, there's a small factor of RNG where some battleships tend to like to stay away from you. In a Rattlesnake, that's no problem because your optimal range is 50 to 60. But in a Tengu, you have to get up closer to them, so you'll have to end up chasing some battleships around sometimes. That being said, they're both very good ships, and they both complete the site in about the same time with comparable skills. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple fits that I use. This is the fit that I'm currently using. It's kind of blingy, but it gets the site done in about 45 minutes, or I think my record is 41. And note that my skills are still far from perfect. I only have Galente and Caldari Battleship 3. I only have Sentry Drones 4 and Cruise Missiles 4. And the support skills are all either 4 or 5. So this can be done a lot faster than I'm doing it. So my fit is just 5 cruise missile launchers. And then you add on a DLA because you ran out of missile slots. And also you're going to be sniping stuff, so you want the control range. Gist X-type shield booster and amplifier, because that's going to be your main tank, your active tank. The 2 hardeners, a pith thermal dissipation and a pith EM ward, because Sansha rats only deal EM and thermal, so those are the only 2 you need to resist. Then I have this cat battery. to help me keep cap stable, and this omnidirectional tracking link, and I'm going to be loading tracking speed script so my sentries can track better, which is actually very important for the smaller ships. In the lows is just some ballistic control systems for missile damage, DDAs for drone damage, and another capacitor flux coil for cap stability. Rigs is an EM hardener, thermal hardener, and a capacitor control circuit, which is pretty self-explanatory. All in all, this fit is completely cap stable with the micro warp drive off. You see it holds at about 47%, which is perfectly fine. Even with it on, which sometimes you might need to have both your micro warp drive and your booster on, it still lasts 3.5 minutes, which is pretty long. Now there is a cheaper version of this fit, what I would call the Tech 2 introductory fit. You can unbling most of this stuff and make the Rattlesnake a lot cheaper. You'll see this, the game estimates to be about 550 million, which is, it's just very affordable if you're going to be buying a ship for a 1010. It's the same 5 cruise missiles, a drone link augmenter, then it's pretty much all the same modules, except they're just not faction or dead space. So Tech 2, Tech 2, Tech 2. The main difference between the fits is that you're going to have a lot less tank, because your booster and amplifier will heal you less, your hardeners will shield you less, and also you will be less cap stable because all the faction stuff uses less cap. So you'll notice that even with the micro warp drive off here, it only lasts 9 minutes and 40 seconds. That's still pretty long, but I prefer my fits to be cap stable, so an easy way to do that with the Rattlesnake, since you don't move around, is to bring a mobile depot with you into the site. And as soon as you warp into each room, drop your mobile depot, and then after 1 minute when it anchors, you can refit your modules. The first thing you're going to want to do is take off the micro warp drive. You'll notice that when I took that off, I'm instantly cap stable. That's because when you have a micro warp drive online, even if it's not active, it will decrease your maximum capacitor by about 25%. The faction micro warp drive does not do that, which is why I run that one. But now that I'm cap stable, you're probably going to want to add on another EM ward field for some more tank to make up for not having bling tank. And in the fourth room, if your tank is really under pressure, you're going to want to take off this cap recharger and put on also a thermal dissipation field for even more tank. Now I'm cap stable, or not cap stable again, so if you find you're starting to run out of cap, just drop a ballistic control system and add on another capacitor flux coil. That will bring you back to stability. The last fit that I want to show you is the travel fit. You're definitely going to want to travel fit when you're gating around. Rattlesnakes are very slow, they're very big, and they're very blingy, so they make great targets for gankers and campers. So in the lows, 3 warp core stabs, that'll protect you from even a faction scram. 3 inertial stabs to give me a sub 7-second align with micro warp drive off. Switch the hardeners for adaptives because players do all types of damage. Then there's the burst jammer and a target spectrum breaker to try to break people's locks on you. The MWD is still on here because I added a cloak into the top, so you can use the MWD cloak trick to escape campers as long as they have no bubbles. There's an MJD just in case you need to get out of a bubble quickly. And I'm keeping the booster here just for a little bit extra tank. I also added on a Sino so that if I really do get caught with a lot of loot and there's caps available on standby, I can light this and get some help quickly. So that's all the fits for the Rattlesnake. One last note before I go and run the site itself. All escalations will spawn in dead space, which means that no matter where you warp into in the dead space pocket, you will always land on the same spot. For the Sansha 10 out of 10, that is the entrance gate to the first room. For you as a runner, what this means is that if you're in the second or third room and you are lazy and you don't notice the newts in local, and you don't check D-scan for combat probes, and you get combat scan down, and they warp to you, they can't just start tackling you immediately. They have to take the first gate to the first room, burn through the whole first room, take the gate to the second room, burn through the second room, etc. until they reach you. And even once they reach you, their allies still have to burn through all the same rooms. So that does afford you a little bit more safety, but that does not ever mean that you are protected from gankers. You are still going to be watching local. As soon as a nuke comes into system, you should start mashing D-scan, and if you ever see combat probes on D-scan, you should immediately warp out before they get a lock on your position. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to run the site. Alright, so here I am at the site. You'll notice that when I warped in, there's only this acceleration gate to Centus Security here. Again, that's because, as I mentioned earlier, it's a dead space pocket. No matter where you warp to in this entire site, you will land here. I'm going to go ahead and take the gate. Now this complex is made up of a total of 5 rooms, 5 dead space pockets with an acceleration gate leading to each. Most of the rooms are laid out pretty much the same. You'll warp in, there will be a group of enemy ships on you at 0, and then there will be a bunch of other groups of ships off in the distance. You have to kill every single ship to use the acceleration gate to make it to the next room, although you definitely can ignore all of these sentry guns, heavy missile batteries, stasis towers, and any other stationary objects. You only have to kill the ships. So here I'm landing in the first room. You'll notice I land on this initial group. It's just 4 or 5 ships. As soon as I land, I'm going to drop heavies and lock them all up and start shooting them. The reason that I drop heavies here instead of sentries is because these destroyers right here are too close for my sentries to be able to track them. So I'm going to want to take the destroyers out first, and then I can drop sentries and kill everything else. Now, while you're in the 10 out of 10, there's 2 main things that you have to worry about. The first is, as I just mentioned, the destroyers. If they get too close to you and under your sentries' guns, you will not be able to hit them. You'll have to drop sentries to kill them or shoot your rockets at them, which is quite annoying, and both of those will waste quite a bit of your time. The second thing that you're going to have to watch out for is drone aggro. For some reason, in dead escalation sites, the rats really, really like to shoot your drones. And as a rattlesnake, your drones are most of your damage, so you have to protect them really well. That's why I have my drone window up here, so I can easily see the drone's health next to all the targets that I'm shooting. If one starts to get damaged, I'm going to pull it back in and put out another one. Now I only have 2 heavies, so I can't really do that with heavies, but I did bring 4 sentries just for that purpose. If one starts getting shot, I'll pull it back in, break everyone's lock on it, and let it regen some shield in my drone bay while I put out another sentry. So this other group over here looks like it aggroed. That's a little bit of RNG. Normally they don't, but since they did anyway, I'm going to go ahead and snipe out these destroyers with my sentries before they get too close. And then I'm just going to work on taking out all the rest of the ships. So now that almost all of the enemies are cleared out, I'm going to want to start moving towards the acceleration gate to get to the next room. However, since I have sentries out, if I just move without my sentries, I won't be able to pick them up, and I'm going to have to abandon them. To avoid that, all I have to do is just recall my sentries, start moving towards the gate, and drop a heavy drone. This heavy drone can move with me as I move. It can shoot the ship uh, without me having to be near it, and then I can just recall it once I hit the gate. The other thing that I'm going to want to do in this first room is set some of my light drones on this assembly security station. The first room is the only room that has this unique building, and all it does is it's going to web whatever gets close to it and start dealing a very small amount of damage. The reason that I drop light drones here and aggro them on the station is so that the station will web my light drone instead of me. If I got webbed here, it would take me a very long time to reach this gate, even with my micro warp drive, so I use my light drone as sort of a decoy. Meanwhile, I drop my other heavy drone on this other battleship and continue firing my missiles at it. And if I time it right, I should arrive at the gate about when the battleship dies. Now this second room is going to be pretty much the same as the first room. I'll land on a group of ships here, take them out, kill all the rest of the destroyers, and then kill the rest of the ships and move on. There is no station in this room, so when I do move to the acceleration gate, I can drop both my heavies. I won't have to use my lights to decoy for me. Alright, here I'm landing on the third room, and in the third room it starts getting a little bit trickier. The main reason is that there's going to be a ton of destroyers, but first, as usual, I just deal with this initial group with my heavies. There's only 2 destroyers in the initial heavy group. There's 3 destroyers in the initial heavy group this time, so you'll be wanting to put 1 drone on each of them so you don't waste any DPS, since your drones in a Rattlesnake will one-shot these guys. Alright, now I'm about to start sniping out some of these destroyers, and I'm going to play this at normal speed because it's important to learn how this works. Anytime I'm sniping distant destroyers, I'm going to have 1 battleship locked, and I'm going to put all my missiles on it for the entire duration. This is to ensure that I don't have to worry about where my missiles are going, because microing the sentries is going to be a hassle by itself. So you'll notice that I have tons of destroyers locked, as many as I can, and I'm only putting 1 sentry on each destroyer. This is because the sentries will pretty much one-shot all of the destroyers, so putting 2 on 1 enemy would be a waste. Also, as I kill each one, I'm locking up more. They take a total of 12 seconds to lock in a battleship, which is pretty horrendous. So if you wait until you're out of targets to start locking them, you're going to waste a lot of time. Make sure as you kill each one, you're locking a new one so that you'll have a steady stream of targets. This room didn't have too many, but the next room is going to have a lot more, so it's going to be very important that you watch both your drone aggro and your target management. I'm now approaching the 4th room of the complex, and this room is the hardest room out of the entire escalation for 2 main reasons. The first is that there are a ton of destroyers. You'll notice as I scroll down here, destroyers for days. The second reason is that there's also a lot of battleships, which means a lot of DPS. In addition, all of these battleships are tyrants, which are the battleships that shoot you from 50 kilometers away, which means they don't have to burn into you to start dealing damage. They'll start dealing damage as soon as they aggro you. So in this room, the strategy is going to be mostly similar. First, I'm going to take out these 2 battle cruisers, and then I'm going to start sniping out all the destroyers with my sentries before they reach me. I'm also going to have to watch out for drone aggro a lot in this room for some reason. Destroyers and battlecruisers, the smaller ships, tend to like to aggro your drones more. And they can also deal more damage since they are better at tracking them. So now that those 2 battlecruisers are down, I'm going to set my missiles on that battleship and start sniping out the destroyers with my sentries. Now that was pretty intense, but all the destroyers are gone now, and none of my sentries even lost all their shields. So that was pretty successful, and now we can just move on to taking out the rest of the ships. You'll note that as the battleships start getting into their optimals, I'm going to start taking a lot more damage. However, with this bling fit that I use, I will never really drop anywhere below 40% shield before I take out enough battleships to ease the tank pressure. If you're running the cheaper T2 fit, at this point you're going to have to switch out for double hardeners. That's 2 EM and 2 thermal. With those, you can tank all of the battleships in this room, absolutely no problem. The other unique thing about this room is that you'll notice there's a lot of sentries over here. There are sentries, heavy missile batteries, and Cistus webbing towers. You can largely ignore them if you just want to get to the gate and move to the next room, but the reason they're there is because there's a red box between all the sentries here called Special Products. Special Products is basically a bonus loot box. It sometimes has some faction loot. However, in all the runs that I've ever done, the most I've ever seen out of that box is 40 mil worth of stuff, and it's very, very, very rare that it even has anything at all. In fact, I've only ever seen it have anything worthwhile 2 or 3 times in over 100 sites that I've done. So by this point, I just tend to ignore the box. And if you're going to ignore the box, you can also ignore all of the sentries, all the heavy missile batteries, and all the stasis webbing towers, because they don't start webbing you until you're basically already at the acceleration gate. So ignoring those, I'm just going to take out the rest of these battleships and then boat over to the gate. Alright, I'm on my way to the last room, which houses the boss and the loot. Now, ironically, the last room is actually one of the easiest rooms in the entire complex, even with the boss structure inside it. There's still a lot of ships in there, but for some reason, all of the ships like to target your drones, so there's barely any tank pressure on you aside from the main structure. Of course, this will mean that you have to micro your drones a little bit more carefully. There's a lot of ships, they deal a lot of DPS. But all you have to do is kill this structure called Station Ultima, grab its loot, and then leave. So I'm just going to drop my sentries, lock it up, sit still with all my tech mods on, and just put all my DPS on it, and watch my drone's health carefully. Now the only thing that the Station Ultima does, well, the two things that it does, one is it webs you, which doesn't matter to us at all because we're a rattlesnake. The second thing is that it's occasionally going to fire a very high damage missile volley at you. You'll notice my health went down by about 35% shortly after I came into the room. That was the Station Ultima's missile barrage. However, even though it deals a lot of damage, it takes 2 to 3 minutes to reload, so I'm already way past fully repped by the time it shoots again, so I'm not worried about that damage at all. If you're using the less blingy fit, you might want to heat your EM hardener as you come into the room. That missile is pure EM, so you don't need to heat anything else, just for one cycle to tank the initial hit. With the DPS of a rattlesnake, you can easily break the reps of Station Ultima, and it doesn't take too long to burn it down. Just make sure you're watching your drone's health. Also, since I'm a rattlesnake and I don't like moving, I'm going to go ahead and drop my mobile tractor unit here so that when it blows up, it's going to suck the loot to me and I won't have to boat all the way over to its wreck to gather the loot. I also dropped a mobile depot. If you're using the refitting method with the cheaper fit, you're going to be want to drop the mobile depot every single room. I'm just dropping it here because sometimes if there's no friendly building in system, you can use that mobile depot to refit to your travel fit and head back home. It's also a nice safety precaution. If somehow you manage to get tackled or you need a bit extra tank or you messed up some other way, you can use the mobile depot to refit yourself to whatever you need. If you wait till you need it to drop it, it's too late because it takes a minute to anchor before you can use it. So you see Station Ultima's already in structure. It doesn't take long at all to burn it down. The ships have shot some of my drones, but nothing too serious at all. Alright, the building is dead. So I'm going to pull my drones and wait here while my MTU pulls in the loot. I'll leave all my tank mods running because the ships are going to start shooting me after I pull my drones in a bit. Get to watch the big pretty explosion and then watch the loot get pulled into your ship. So it looks like this site dropped this personal effects, which is base loot, and it also dropped a nightmare blueprint, which is a very nice drop. Nothing else faction, nothing else worthy of note. So I'm going to scoop my mobile tractor unit and warp off to dock up. Alright, now that I'm safely docked up and I have my loot stowed away, got just a couple more tips for you before I end this video. Firstly, the loot that you get from this site follows a pretty predictable pattern. There will always be a base item called the Overseer's Personal Effects that's worth 134 million. On top of that, you can sometimes get faction items, true Sansha items, or dead space items, which are going to be Centus items for Sansha 10 out of 10s. And those will increase the value of your haul significantly. And the last thing that can happen with the loot is that you might get a Nightmare Blueprint copy drop. Currently, the Nightmare Blueprint is worth about 300 million. So if you get that, it pretty much doubles or more the value of your site. Here's a notepad that I've recently started keeping of my loot hauls from doing 10 out of 10s. There are quite a few base loots, just 135. And then sometimes I get a little more, 226. Recently the highest I've gotten would probably be this 317 or so. And then all the plus BPs indicate when I get a blueprint. So it's about roughly 1 in 4 to 1 in 5, or 1 in 3 if you're lucky. It's all RNG. Here's one run where I got something from the special products box, but shortly after that, somewhere around here, I stopped checking it. It really was not worth the time anyway. If you have any other questions, you should definitely join the channel Catch Crabs. It's an in-game channel. Here's the spelling. We've got lots of experienced writers in here who can answer your questions, and it's a player-driven channel where a couple of us are making an effort to upgrade and organize Redding and Catch. We've got systems that we've purchased upgrades for, we've got call-out channels to help people avoid warping into each other, and it's a pretty good place if you ever need help with anything Redding related. Now this video was for rattlesnakes doing 1010s. You can also use Tengus, but I have no experience running Tengus. If you do have any questions or want to know how to run 10s in Tengus, you should ask this guy, Paul Hipser Malcolmson. He is pretty much the premier Tengu runner in Catch for Sansha 10 out of 10s, and he's made a couple videos on this topic as well for the Tengu. That's going to be it for this video. Thanks for tuning in, and good luck on your runs.